3, and we're ready. Good morning, everybody. How we doing? This is Mario and Chad here. We've got a great guest for our RE Hustle listeners. We've got Mehul Patel, and Mehul comes out of New York City. He's the CEO of Equator Capital Management. He's also a stand-up comic there in New York City as well. So Mehul, thank you so much for jumping on with Chad and I this morning.
Thanks,
man. Share some stuff. If you don't mind, introduce yourself to everybody and let us know a little bit about how you met us, or more importantly, Chad back in the day.
Sure. So like Mario said, I run Equator Capital with a business partner up in New York, mostly focused on real estate investments, invest in a few other things as well outside of real estate, mostly operating businesses. I actually met Chad,
27 years ago, bro.
27 years ago in our freshman dorm at the University of Maryland.
Chestertown.
Yeah, man. We were all the guys who were lazy and sent in housing late and ended up in an all guys dorm.
Yes.
So that was the common denominator among all of us. We sent all our information into the school late, and luckily back then there wasn't a student housing shortage. They just stuck us all with a bunch of other dudes, which was horrible at first when you walked in and you realized there was not a single girl in the building.
And none even close to us. There was an all-girls dorm, but it was halfway across campus.
Yeah, it was a solid 10-minute walk. And we were on the part of campus where none of the other dorms were open. There was directly across from us was another empty dorm. Directly next to us, another guy's dorm.
Wow.
So there was, it sucked. The first 48 hours, I was like, this is going to be horrible. I already ate my freshman year. I didn't like my roommate. I was just like, this sucks. But I met Chad probably a day or two in, and, come to find out, it was being with a bunch of dudes, as painful as it sounds, we actually all became pretty good friends. And we probably would have been distracted getting rejected by girls for an entire year instead of becoming pretty close friends. I'm still friends with a handful of those guys. So, in the long run, it worked out. In the short run, it sucked.
Yeah. I just talked to Ralph just a couple days ago.
Yeah. We have a mutual friend who actually lives out in New Jersey. It's nice. It's nice to be able to reconnect with those guys and stay in touch.
That's crazy. So you guys, were experienced or introduced to quarantine way back.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. It was constant boredom and, idle hands. Whoever came up with that saying, it is true. We did some dumb stuff.
I also remember feeling quite angry at times. Number one, the anger of youth, but then the anger of youth with no women around.
Oh, it was terrible. It was terrible. The crazy thing is we would have met no women if they were on the floor anyway. We were like a bunch of gameless guys who thought we would meet women. They could have been a ratio of 100 to 1. And we would have screwed it up. I was not one of us is smooth at all. We're pissed that there's no women, but there could have been 1,000 of them, and I think maybe I would have gotten 2 phone numbers.
Right.
It was all good. It was all good. But it was a fun time. Maryland was a fun time. So that's how I met Chad. He was the dude down the hall.
That's awesome. Well, talk to me a little bit about being a stand-up comic. I think that's super interesting, but I also want to know what is the transition going to be like as a stand-up comic? Because I would imagine you guys have to feel off the crowd, and if they take away the crowds like athletes, how would you do a stand-up comic virtually? It's kind of
it's like a lot of industries that are taking a big adjustment, but what you said is very accurate. When you're up on stage, such a big part of it is how you're reading off of people. And the reality is all of us do it, even if you're in a meeting. You guys are in investment sales. You guys are also in single family home sales. You get a vibe as to kind of what the buyer and seller is thinking, feeling. You can tell when they're anxious about something, nervous about something, excited about something. And you, as somebody who's understands, sales, you're going to adjust based on how you read and react to them. And stand-up comedy isn't much different. You're up there selling jokes. I mean, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it a craft, storytelling, but to me, you're selling jokes, and you got to be confident in what you're selling. And so you've got to go up there, with the attitude, this is the best joke ever. And the only, I mean, but it's also hard to sell a bad joke, right? I mean, if somebody's got a house that's got terrible light and air, backyard is screwed up, definitely haven't been doing maintenance, that's a hard sell. It may have some good bones in there, but that's a hard sell. Like, so a bad joke is hard to sell. I mean, a great comic might be able to pull it off, but it's still hard. So it still ultimately comes back to like sort of prepping. And I think stand-up comedy, more than anything else, it's repetition, it's prep, but it's trying to get to a point, I think for me personally, at least, where you go up there and you become completely indifferent as to, am I going to do well or am I going to do poorly? It's about being authentic and being, very much yourself up there. And I think that's actually what makes good salespeople, right? I think if you're great at sales, it's ultimately because the person thinks they're talking to a person, not somebody who's trying to sell them something.
Got it.
And so I think that's how I've always viewed stand-up comedy. So now that we're, quarantined and a lot of us are moving to, I'm working on a virtual online show where it's just a debate among comics on a funny topic, and trying to get that to work. It's harder. I mean, there's no question it's harder.
Right.
It's without that interaction, you're flying blind a little bit. But again, I think it just comes to prep, and I think it's almost, like I said, I'm liking it a lot to real estate sales, but or any sales really. It's always harder to close a deal over the phone. You can do it, but it's harder. I think it all will come down to the people who are really prepared and believe in what they're saying are going to come across as authentic, and you have to believe the person on the other side is embracing it. So it is going to be harder. There's no question, but the reality is we live in a digital world, and is sort of like comedy hasn't changed in 40, 50 years, the delivery of it. It's going to change, and this is just accelerating it. And I think you got to either embrace it or you're going to be pretty miserable. You're going to be the guy who still owns a CD store, like you're going to.
Hey, Mehul. So I watched a little bit from some of your social media stuff, the stuff on Twitch TV that you were talking about, the remotely funny. Yeah. So pretty funny. I mean, good stuff. Like, I enjoyed the little clips. I was actually thinking about trying to jump maybe on Twitch TV just to see if I can figure out how to watch some of that stuff. But obviously, I know from talking to you previously, like, live in New York City, but you're actually down here in North Carolina in Raleigh right now, right?
Yep.
So my question for you is, with the contacts that you have, like at the clubs in New York City where you would normally perform, have you talked with any of the owners or other comics up there about kind of how that delivery system, have they had any thoughts about how they're going to do different things?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the conversation. I think it's twofold. It's, you have one, like in any industry, right? You're going to have the people who are like, no, we're going to open up. It's going to be business like usual. After 4th of July, everything's going to be good, and it's not. It's not going to be bad, but it's not going to be the same. I mean, you just don't put toothpaste back in. It doesn't work like that, right? And
right.
You just can't. It's out the tube. It's out the tube, And so I think there's a slow, sort of steady embrace of the fact that things are going to change. So there are definitely club owners that are, though. I did very early on in quarantine a show through Helium, who owns Good Nights Comedy Club down in Raleigh, but they own like 5 or 6 other clubs. They did this thing called Comedy Roulette, where they just grabbed you just threw out a number, and then you got a question, and you had to do the topic. And they had done that on stage previously, but they did it online. And so, I think comics are realizing that, whatever concept that they come up with, it's got to be interactive. That's what the world wants, and nobody wants to pick up their phone or go online and just not be able to interact with the stuff that they're using as entertainment. So I think it's going to still be a slow evolution in comedy. I think there will be some resistance to it, but quite honestly, I think it's going to be futile. Even if the quarantine and virus disappeared tomorrow, this is just the direction the world's going in. The amount of money that's invested in that thing that we carry in our hand every second of every day, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And to look at that medium and say, I don't think I want to be a part of that it just doesn't make sense. You're going to have to embrace it.
It's definitely an easy way to get an international exposure.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense for the comics. We did a show on Twitch TV 2 weeks ago, I think now, or maybe it was last week. We had a guy in Vegas, we had a guy in Montreal, and a comic, she was up in New York. And you could never do something like that. You couldn't even you couldn't even conceive how that would work. This was an inexpensive way to do it. People had a good time watching, and you also are building a larger network of comics that, the comic up in Montreal had never met these other 2 comics. And suddenly he's, growing his footprint, his professional network. And it's, to me, comedy, I've used the same principles in real estate and comedy, where I'm just going to network. I'm going to, cling to the people that I think are the hardest workers, and I'm just going to try to copy their work ethic and try to be like them. And that's it, and those principles work. I think they work no matter what industry you're in. So, but I think there is going to have to be a transition to online in comedy. It seems inevitable.
That's cool. That's good stuff right there. You're absolutely spot on about the work ethic aspect of things. That's been what I do all my life, is just try to attach myself.
Yeah.
And you're right. That's what it's all about.
You're always going to find that one person that you're just like, man, this guy, this girl, just, I don't know. They're making me look lazy. And, instead of looking at that person as an adversary, you got to look at, you hope that they're, decent enough to teach you something. And most people who are successful, they see potential in people, and they embrace doing it. I've never had somebody be like, hey, get the hell away from me. Like, I don't want to talk to you. Usually it's, if you're showing that you're willing to work, they're like, yeah, man, I've been looking for somebody that's willing to grind it out and do the kind of ugly, dirty stuff, because, there's no sexy path to being successful. It's usually pretty ugly and pretty gnarly, and you just got to get filthy before you get clean.
That's true, man. Amen.
100%. Great point.
Hey, well, listen, I know you and Chad have been in a fantasy league for like forever, but
yeah.
Are you, as a sports fan, is there a particular team that you follow, or is it more you kind of just stick with it all together? Yeah,
I kind of like, I used to, I grew up outside of Boston, so I used to be a homer with like Boston teams. But as honestly, the truth be told, it's like fantasy sort of evolved. I just became more of a fan of individual players, and just I just like watching a competitive game now. Yeah, as I was rooting for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, just because they had not won anything in 40 years almost, or even longer. So yeah, sometimes there's a rooting interest, but it's pretty typical. It's usually the underdog that I'm going for. Basketball, I think at this point, it's just like there's just individual players that I just like watching. I mean, I love basketball. Definitely my favorite sport. But yeah, I mean, I was a huge Raptors fan only because I loved watching Kawhi Leonard play, and now I'll like watching the Clippers. If their season were to start, I would hope that they would make a run. But definitely, kind of individual players I love watching. And again, it goes back to what we were saying. You can see, you can see the Mamba in certain guys, right? And you respect it. And I think that's why when what happened to Kobe, it hits you because you're just like, man, that was somebody who busted it every day, and it shows. But so I love seeing those types of players where you're like, man, that person is working their tail off that we don't see, but you see it in the results.
Well, look, if you could have been any athlete, what would you have been if you could have chose that path of life?
It's a tough one. If I could have been any athlete, I mean, I love basketball, but there's something about, I guess, not as much anymore. I guess it was when we were younger. And being the heavyweight champ of the world was like that was like, you get to say you're the heavyweight champ of the world and you get a belt. Like you're kind of like a Greek god, like you're immortalized. You're on Wheaties boxes. They give you a parade. Like you're the champ. You're the champ.
I feel like our age, we witnessed the best type of boxing. Like boxing today, miserable. I mean,
yeah. Now it's just like throw a haymaker. And if it just like the heavyweights throw haymakers, and when you go down in weight, it's just avoid trying to get hit. Is what it is, which I get is a obvious strategy of boxing, but like it's not the same. I mean, I think what we saw was kind of the golden age, like in the 80s, that arc of Larry Holmes, and then, obviously Tyson, and just the personalities. They were just bigger personalities. I mean, they were, obviously Muhammad Ali and Frazier and all those guys predating that. That's where like showmanship came from. That's where like trash talking came from. And they were obviously, like Hagler and Sugar Ray. I mean, those guys, like all of middleweight, lightweight, it was awesome. Like I just, the truth be told, I barely watch boxing now. Like I don't want to. If I could have one skill, that would be it.
That's awesome.
I think touching off that boxing point a little bit, I think, like you said, and when we were growing up, like with Tyson and even Larry Holmes and before them, like not only were like the heavyweight champs, right, but they were like universally recognized as like the baddest person on the planet, right? Like knew you didn't want to mess with that guy. So
exactly. Yeah, it definitely. And it was just like, and it was an event. I mean, it was pay-per-view. You get to pay like $30 or something, $50 to watch the fight, and you have a bunch of friends.
And it didn't start off like that. It used to be like ABC Wild World of Sports would play all the stuff for free, and then all of a sudden, like you get
and it moved. Yeah. I remember ABC. Yeah, like Larry Holmes. I remember watching Larry. I remember I think it was Holmes and Spinks, and I was a little kid, and I loved Larry Holmes, and I just thought he got robbed. And I was like, I couldn't sleep. I was just like, what? This is wrong, man. How could Larry Holmes? This is totally wrong. He won. And I mean, obviously everybody remembers Holyfield and Tyson and the fight and all that. Like that was kind of the end. I felt like the end of Holyfield's career, or even like, not the end, that was just sad. But, like probably a few years before he was just holding on to fighting. That was when it started to slip away as far as like, I just didn't enjoy it. The personalities were, it just, I don't know. It wasn't interesting anymore. But that would be amazing to be the heavyweight champ.
They couldn't find anything to replace him. But hey, do you think subconsciously that dream that you just shared with us has anything to do with getting your names in lights as a comedian? I mean, that's almost like getting on a stage as a boxer. You know, you're announcing.
Probably.
Oh, coming to
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. Like any comic who says they don't like that is a fool. I mean, they're lying. I mean, you love getting the singularity of boxing is just two guys in the ring, and stand up, you're up there alone, really.
Right.
And so I think that part I like a lot, because it is competitive. For me, I'm competing up there. I mean, I have a lot of comics who are genuinely my friends, but I'm competing against them the same way if I was playing basketball with Chad. I mean, we're good friends, but yeah, I'm going to compete. I want to win. And it's same with comedy. You want to kind of live up to your end. You want to be just as good as comics particularly the comics that you know. I mean, so nothing worse than bombing with your comics that are your peers. It sucks, because you come off stage and it was like, yeah, it wasn't that bad. I was like, yeah, it was. It was terrible. You know it. Like, I totally sucked wind up there. Don't pity me. Don't do that. You're better than that, So I definitely think that drove me up there. Kind of that. All right, I'm gonna stand up here and see if I can do it. I mean, I was scared, like out of my mind the first time I did it. I mean, I wanted to leave. Like, I was just sitting in the back. Like, I'm like, I should just leave. Why am I even here? Like, this is so stupid. Like, nobody's going to care. I'll just walk out and I'll never see these people again. What does it matter? Whatever. And I must have said that to myself. The funny story about that is I was so nervous I had to keep peeing, right? So I kept going to the bathroom. But I also was getting like cotton mouth. So I kept needing to drink water. Like, my mouth was just drying out. I was so nervous. So I was constantly drinking water, and then that would make me have to go piss. And I just kept, and I was like way down on the lineup. I was like the last guy on like a Monday night, like new talent. And this one, I kept going to the bathroom so much. This like really strung out comic was like, yo, hey, can you share? And I was like, share what? I was like, what are you talking about? I was so nervous and confused. I was like, what the hell is this guy talking about? Share my jokes. I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, man, I just, could you spare some? And I was like, the hell are you talking about, man? Spare what? He's like, well, I just seen you going back to the bathroom a lot. Like, you got any blow? And I'm like, no, I'm fucking nervous, man. I'm scared. I want to go home. I'm pissing. It's either that or I'm pissing my pants, dude. Like, I was like, you're useless. So I was like, I thought you were going to come over here and be like, hey, man, I see you're new. It's going to be all right. I was like, you coming over here for a drug deal, dude? No, man, I got nothing. I got Mountain Dew, man. That's all I got. Like, I was like, oh, my God. But you pushed through it. But, yeah, to answer your question, yeah, for sure, that sort of being up there by yourself, and it's up to you to kind of fight your way out of it. Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. That's
awesome. You feel like that's the closest I feel like to being a champ is walking off when you get the room to laugh.
Yeah, or importantly, just cheering you back off, man. Just like a big room, loud clap. That's dope.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a great feeling. And that part of live comedy, it's the best. That's why you do it. That's why you do it.
Hey, so think of right now, since we're all kind of slowly coming out of this quarantine, what's one of the biggest positives that you can take away from this, maybe personally or even professionally, that the COVID-19 has kind of brought into you?
Yeah, I think the biggest positive from it is, for me, is like there's a lot of, I think it's like, I realize like, I don't miss, like, I don't miss certain things. Like I don't miss going to a bar. I don't miss going to the movie theaters. I don't miss those things. I miss my pursuits. Like I miss doing stand-up comedy. I miss not being able to take meetings in person. I miss not being able to link up with somebody I used to work with. And I think so for me, the positives really are all the things I miss are not really that materialistic. I don't really miss a specific service or meal or anything like that. I miss the things that I do, and so I I take a real positive from that because you go through life and things change, and I think at a certain point your things can start to own you a little bit, and I don't miss any of that. Like I packed a bag, came down to North Carolina 2 months ago, and I don't miss one thing in my apartment in New York. And it's sort of like I don't miss my stuff. I don't think that'll ever really be the case. I miss the interactions with people is what I miss. And I think a lot of people are like that. So I think the positive is it's like the things that you really need are actually free. It doesn't have anything to do with if you're earning money or not. It's are you engaged with people? Are you interacting with people? So I think that for me, I think that's positive. Like doing this is great. I'm looking forward to it, since Chad brought it up, because this is to me is a real thing. I mean, it's not a materialistic thing. This is just people talking and enjoying
connecting
from somebody else. So that's the biggest positive. I mean, it just reinforced how important it is to listen to people, and also not be so, don't have to, you get to leave your ego somewhere else. You can't lead with that. You got to have an ego to get things done, but I don't think you can lead with that. I think it's all right. I think people are realizing it's all right to be like, I just need to talk to somebody. I need to really talk to somebody, and hopefully I think like the mental health awareness sharpens a little bit after this, because I think you realize how critical that is, and why somebody who might be alone all the time behaves the way they do, right? Like now you might empathize with somebody who doesn't have a lot of engagement in their life, and maybe that's why they do the things that they do. So I hope I'm better at that too. I hope I'm not as quick to judge somebody because of just some little, behavior that I saw. There's usually a bigger story behind it.
No, that's a huge point that you made, talking about those tangible things that we tend to really just not pay a lot of attention to until it's taken away.
Yeah.
Massive what you just said. That's huge. Now, thinking about as we start to get released in certain states, I mean, what have you thought about what your transition is going to be like, respecting the moments that you're in right now, transitioning back into the world and knowing, I'm going back to my fancy apartment, my fancy toys, how to keep the mindset you have today and transitioning it into the new norm, if you will?
Yeah, well, I actually was kind of even doing a stand-up bit on it. I'm like, it's going to feel like puberty again. Like you're going to be like, yo, people are making eye contact with me. This is weird. I don't know if I want to see the people. Like, oh my God, she's talking to me. I don't want to talk to her. Like, I haven't really been around people. So I think there's going to be, I think for me, a certain level of probably some social anxiety and awkwardness, and people might say, what, are you crazy? Like, you're going to be so happy to see people. Of course. Yeah. I mean, you're going through puberty. All you want to do is see girls, and then you see them and you freak out. I was like, it's going to be the same thing. I was like, yeah, all I want to do is see people, but I haven't been around people, I'm talking to myself in here. I was like, that's not going to be acceptable once I'm out in the real world again. So I think it's going to be, to me, of how you see people. Like it may be, I think it'll be a little overwhelming, for me. I think I'm gonna want to see everybody all the time, and I don't think that's a realistic thing to do. I think you got to pace yourself, and you just can't let the tide come crashing in like that, and you try to like just scoop it all back up again, and really be socializing all the time. That's not healthy either, because you're not leaving any time for yourself. I think for me, it's just that awkwardness. It's going to have that first day of school awkwardness, where you're excited the night before, but you're a little nervous too. Like, and look, the truth is, like, everybody's situation is different. Some people may have lost their job permanently. Some people might have their job, and we're all very entrepreneurial in what we're doing, and that's different too. And I think you're just going to have to be really sensitive about what the other person's circumstance is, because there's going to be some people who are really hurt, lost their job, didn't think they were going to ever lose that job 60 days ago, and you may be sitting across from them with a job. And that word job and working are going to become so elevated when you have 30 million people unemployed. That is going to become like, having a swimming pool on a 105-degree day. That's what it's going to feel like. And I think for those of us who are fortunate enough to continue to be able to work through this and do that, I think you need to have, you got to really extend some empathy and patience with people who are going through that. So I think all of that combined, kind of balancing all that, the excitement, but also knowing the fact that there's people going through some tough circumstances, kind of balancing all that is what I'm a little bit nervous about.
It's also going to be a little bit like when we were kids, people fighting for Jordans. But when Chad and I went to go change a battery the other day, I think I coughed when I got out of the truck. This lady was on a window, and she like quickly was like, "Wow!" Like
her head snapped around so fast.
I think so, man. I mean, I think people are going to be, and I don't, I don't necessarily think people are going to mean it. I think, I think it's just a knee-jerk reaction where everybody's got some level of PTSD, man. Like, we all, it's all building up in our brains, and we're going to like kind of be like, what was that? What was that? So I think that like, little bit of awkwardness is probably what I'm thinking about. Is gonna, just going back to the office is gonna be different. Than not shaking hands with people is gonna be different. I mean, comedy clubs, it's like there's no shaking hands with comedy. You give them a hug, you're like, yeah, it's my guy. Like, you're hoping everybody breaks through, and this is, it's just a very much fraternity environment, and kind of that physical part of it is going to be gone. You're going to have to keep that physical distance. So it's going to be a transition. It'll be different. But I would be lying if I'd say I won't be a little nervous that first sort of foray into it.
I hear you. Well, hey, the premise of our cast that Chad and I came up with is really talking about screw-ups that's turned into buildups within our life, like a life lesson, if you will, either not too long ago or deep in our past. Is there something you're willing to share with us and the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I guess an event that like could have, been bad. It was actually the last recession. It was 2009, August, and I was working for a real estate developer in New York. He was a tough guy and, successful guy. And he asked me to do something that I wasn't comfortable doing. And I kind of let him know. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. Like, that just seems like a gray area that I don't want to mess around with. Long story short is basically like, well, if you don't do this, you got to leave. And, it's 2009, August. The everything's cratering. Lehman had gone bankrupt a year before. Unemployment was just, it was just a bad circumstance. And I just honestly, I didn't know what to do. I was like, I don't like what I'm being asked to do, but I also like don't have any prospects. And, both my parents are immigrants. I remember talking to my dad, and he's like, "Are you going to be happy the next morning if you do what he's asking you to?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Then you already got your decision. I mean, that's it. You got to be able to look in the mirror." And so I resigned. I quit. And surprisingly, I wasn't that freaked out. I probably should have been. And in retrospect, it was the best decision because it forced me to all the times I was like, I really want to work for myself. I really want to work for myself. And I didn't have a choice. Like I had to work for myself. I had to find a way to like make a living. And what I learned is I was like, man, there's no playbook here. You can read all the case studies you want. You can do all that and prepare to work for yourself. Yeah, and I think you should do all that, but ultimately, it's just, how much of a beating are you willing to take at first, and still have some resolve? And I heard like the best definition of resolve is a promise to yourself you're not going to quit, and that's it. And then I learned that, and so it wasn't so much of a screw up, but it was sort of a fork in the road. I think my screw up was taking that job, right? Because I took it in earlier that year. I'd only been there 6 months, and it was out of the mistake was I took it out of concern. I was like, I need a new job because the other one I was about to lose, and I took a job with somebody who didn't have a great industry reputation. And it didn't come to me as a big surprise that I'm being asked to do something in the gray area. So the mistake was upstream, and I had to deal with it downstream, and it just was worse. I should never have taken the position. But, that was the last time I ever worked for somebody. And that was 11 years ago. And, it was hard, those first few years. There's not one there's not one aspect of it that I could describe to somebody that would encourage them to work for themselves. But you get through it. I don't have any special skills or talent. Like, you get through it. Just kind of by grinding. And eventually what happened was somebody who was really successful cut me a break. Gave me a shot. And that's usually what happens is somebody along the way will be like, yeah, I cut this guy a break. It's no skin off my back. If he succeeds, great. If he doesn't, I lose nothing. And there will always be somebody, if you're honest in your effort, there will be somebody along the way that's going to do that. There will. That in the history of success, I've never heard somebody not get afforded a break that was putting in all the effort they possibly could.
No, I agree with you 1,000,000%, man. If there's anything that entrepreneurs are I guess judged by is their sweat equity, is the thing they do, like you said, behind doors. It's work ethic is something nobody can take away from you. It doesn't take brains. It doesn't take money. It doesn't take coming from a fancy family. It just takes pure grind, grit, and just guts to do those things. And that's pretty cool, man, for you to share that story, to see that and make that personal decision to actually just push yourself into the uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
But because of that uncomfortableness, you've become who you are today, and that's an awesome story.
Yeah, like I wouldn't be able to be a stand-up comic if I wasn't working for myself. It's not possible. Like you need such flexibility to do certain things, and I wouldn't have the confidence to do it. Also, like I at least had something else to push off of, and but yeah, ultimately you get it's what you're doing in the dark that get your results in the light, you know, and if you're not working in the dark, forget about when the lights come on, you're going to choke, man. I mean, without a doubt, you're going to choke.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I know you got a lot going on for yourself right now, but in closing, you know, as we try to, you know, close this up a little bit, I'm just curious. And once again, I appreciate you sharing that story with us. What is one of your dream places that you'd like to visit as we get released and start doing things? Where is one place, wherever it can be, anywhere in the world, that you'd want to visit?
You know, like I actually worked a lot out in Asia and all over the place. So I was fortunate to like visit a lot of places. But you know what's crazy? I would love to eat. I'd be two extremes, but I'd love to go to Alaska, man.
Wow.
I would love to check it out. It's just something about the fact that it's like on top of the planet, and I would love to check it out. You know, I like reading about history and just kind of even thinking about people crossing over, you know, the Bering Strait way back when and coming all the way down. It would be cool to go check it out. I would love to go up there and just see it. And you know, I see pictures obviously, but actually see it up close, I would love to go to Alaska.
That's pretty cool, because we did a thing during this talking about real estate market pockets. And one of the agents responded from Alaska, and when he shared their transactions out there, I was blown away. I'm like, bro, you're doing 2 times transactions than people are doing in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was like, it didn't make
crazy.
sense. I'm like, I didn't know you had that many people in Alaska. You know, from my perspective, I'm like, yeah, there's barely anybody up there. It's just
and they never move. You would assume nobody moves, and it's just sort of
free land.
Yeah,
It was like it's just it blew me away to see his numbers. But on top of that, that's also on my bucket list.
Yeah, it's got to be a different world up there, and it just has to be, right? And I'm just so curious to see how someone's day to day is. It's probably very similar in a lot of ways, but in some ways it's probably distinctly different.
Yeah. I remember watching a show on it about the football team, and how they're playing in like 4 feet of snow. It was just crazy. But anyways, man, look, Mehul, I appreciate you coming out, hanging out.
This is great.
But listen, how can people watch you, see you, get in touch with you as a comic, or even as a professional in your, the commercial business?
Commercial business, Mehul Patel on LinkedIn. You know, I use LinkedIn a lot. I definitely use it to keep track of people in the industry. That's the easy way to get a hold of me. And then comedy-wise, all my handles are Mehul Patel NYC, Instagram, Twitter. You can catch me. And we're doing Twitch TV on Wednesday, May 13th, another show called Remotely Funny. You can check that out. But if you're in New York, hopefully the clubs will be open and see some folks soon. I'm looking forward to the first live show I do again. Oh man, that's gonna be like, that's not gonna be first day of school. That's gonna be night before Christmas, man. That's gonna be, that's gonna be. Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to sleep. I'm not gonna be able to sleep.
Yeah, you're gonna have to find your boy again. That little tweaker guy.
Yeah.
Well, listen, man, we appreciate you hanging out with us, sharing with us.
Mehul.
Yeah, man.
And we'll talk to you shortly, brother.
All right, man. Take care, guys. Stay safe.
You too, brother.